Hello YouTube! Today in the Naughty Librarian, I am doing my November wrap-up. Shock of all shocks, I actually read 13 books this month. Holy potatoes. I was really worried I wasn't going to read that much, but surprisingly I found a lot of reading time. This video in particular, I'm going to be going over 10 of them. There are 3 additional books, but frankly those 3 books, they need their own video, so stay tuned for that. Let's just get into it. I'm going to be continuing with the same format from my last video because you guys seem to like that, so let's go. In the month of November, I read 2 murder mysteries. First things first, I read Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson. I gave it 3 stars. I know it's popular, but it's just, if I'm gonna be super blunt and to the point, the characters were bland and I had no care about what happened to them. Like, I just felt like it was so dull. Considering it's a murder mystery, it's dull a lot of the time. Basic gist of the story, there's this girl named Stevie. She kind of models herself after Sherlock Holmes, and she's going to this school called Ellingham, where a murder mystery happened, like, I don't know, 100 years ago? Something like that. And Stevie gets there and she's like, I'm gonna solve the murder mystery! And then, a real murder mystery starts happening right around her, and then if you throw in, like, kissing and oddball characters, you have Truly Devious. The structure was good. The plot was good. It's just, I didn't particularly like the characters. I felt like they were caricatures of characters. Like, I think I was supposed to find all these oddball, like, kids at this school to be endearing, but in reality, I didn't connect to them at all. I felt like we didn't really get to know them. I think a lot more of the point of the story was based on the plot rather than the character development. And yeah, Stevie's a dull person. Like, she's not really exciting to read from her perspective. I felt just bored most of the time, I'm being honest. Also, wait just a damn second, this isn't a standalone. I wish someone would have told me that going in, because I thought it was a standalone and it was going to be solved and I could move on with my life. It's not. There's going to be at least 1 more book, and it's unfortunate because I didn't like this enough to want to read another book in the series, which means I'm not going to know the ultimate result of the mystery unless I, like, make myself read the next book, which I doubt I'll do. So it's just going to always be a mystery to me, I guess. The other murder mystery I read was The Cheerleaders by Kara Thomas. Truly Devious and The Cheerleaders, total different ends of the spectrum of murder mysteries, where Truly Devious was kind of more lighthearted. Cheerleaders is like pitch black dark right from the beginning. But that's kind of, you can say that about any Kara Thomas books. Oh, I love them so much. Kara Thomas writes incredible murder mysteries. I know they're technically YA books, but really, like, I feel like they're very geared toward adults. This one in particular follows this girl named Monica. She's 16, and from page 1, you already know something is very rotten in the state of Denmark. Like, the kids aren't all right. We are following Monica as she is hunting for clues in regard to her sister, who was a cheerleader, and she died 5 years ago from suicide. Or so she thinks. She might not have. She's trying to see if she was actually murdered, because 5 years ago, there were 5 different cheerleaders who all got killed off, like, one after another in the course of a couple months. And her sister was the last one to die. So she's like, maybe she didn't commit suicide. Maybe it was a murder. Like, maybe I should investigate. And basically you just go down this rabbit hole of, like, teenage girls lying to each other and the complex, like, friendships that teenage girls can have, because speaking as someone who was a teenage girl, we are often just filled with uncontrollable wrath for no reason. It's just something about being a teenage girl. You can just be angry for no reason. And then in Kara Thomas books, it's that anger of being a teenage girl. Like, what happens when that turns toxic? And nothing good happens. Like, I love how deliciously dark these are. It's dark and twisty-turny. I never can pick the killer. When the killer was revealed, honestly didn't expect it. Didn't expect the reason for it. Oh my gosh, totally. I can never peg them. Also, there's this thing with Kara Thomas books. Always the last chapter is like one last dick punch. Like, every book I've read, she's only written 3 books, I believe, this is her 3rd, and like the last sentence of the book is always just like, oh my gosh! She always leaves you on a note of like haunting. It's so like haunting when she leaves a book. And this one is no exception. It's another little haunting bit that you weren't expecting, and you're just like, oh my gosh. I highly recommend, if you're looking for like a good murder mystery that's dark and twisty-turny, read anything by Kara Thomas. Cheerleaders too, excellent. I read a whole boatload of fantasy this month. I was just in the mood for it. I mean, I'm always in the mood for fantasy, but like I read like 6 fantasy books. Some are urban fantasy, some are like straight up fantasy, but let's just get into all the fantastical goodness. To start things off, I read Ruin and Rising by Leigh Bardugo. This is book 3, the finale of the Grisha trilogy. I am happy that I was able to finish it off. I buddy read this with Bethany from Beautifully Bookish Bethany and Liene from Liene's Library. I'll link them down below, check them out, they're awesome ladies. You know what, I think out of the entire Grisha trilogy, I'm gonna say Ruin and Rising was my favorite one. A solid 4 stars, I thought this was pretty good. I think the key to my love of these books was Nikolai Lantsov. He is a precious sunbeam, and I will read anything he's in. Oh my goodness gracious. He's a rogue with a heart of gold. He's like basically like custom made to pull at all my heartstrings. Like, I don't know what I would do without you. Because frankly, I think Alina and Mal are the whiniest whiners who ever whined. So if this didn't have Nikolai, I think I might not have liked the series overall as much as I do now. So Nikolai, he's like stealing the show and saving it at the same time. This is the end, this is the big epic showdown. This is Alina facing off against the Darkling. Who is going to win? I mean, obviously, Alina will win, because why wouldn't she? I know this is called Ruin and Rising, and a lot of the titles have like, they sound really badass, but I think a majority of the story is not Ruin or Rising or Siege and Storming like the last book, and most of it is just Alina like whining and walking to different places. Like, a lot of the story is actually not actively going toward the arc of getting Alina to face off against the Darkling. She's doing a lot of other stuff that's also important, but it's not necessarily like has anything to do with the main arc of the whole trilogy. So it's like a lot of like, okay, let's get to the point. Some parts of this book, like, whew, like I think chapter 13, after I read it, I literally threw the book. Like, I threw it. There were some bombshells in this that really was just like, oh, Leigh Bardugo, you bitch. Like, so, yeah, you know what? It's my favorite. I'm gonna stop, like, yammering on about this book. It's good. It's part of the Grisha trilogy. It's the finale. I enjoyed it the most out of all the other Grisha books. I also continued the Shades of Magic series, and I read A Gathering of Shadows by V.E. Schwab. I ended up giving this 4 stars, but I was leaning towards 3 stars for a lot of the book, because a lot of the book, not a lot's going on. Like, it's oddly paced, where I know what's happening is happening, but it's like, it's not furthering the plot, you know what I mean? They're like, it's kind of stagnant for a long time in this. It's fun, but it doesn't serve a purpose. So like, yeah, I felt like the pacing was a bit off in this, but not enough for me to like dislike it. It wasn't like, what's happening? Like, how is this forwarding the plot? It's a lot of middle. It's a lot of middle, and it is the middle book of the series. What did make me give it 4 stars was Lila's journey at the very beginning of the book and the very end of the book. So if you leave out the middle of this, Lila's journey was pretty good. I liked her. I did feel like she was like willfully reckless a lot of the time, and someone needed to sit her down and be like, girl, stop it, you need to think about things. Because she was like a very much leap before you look in this, and that's kind of her personality, but that's a bothersome personality. It's just, she's so reckless all the time that you just want to strangle her a little bit. Then you have Kel and Rye, and I think they spend the entire book moping. That's really all they kind of do. They mope about their predicament in life. They spend so much time moping about that and like what that means. And I understand like that's like an interesting path to go down for character development, but it was kind of one note where they just whined, and they weren't like growing or coming up with like a new way of thinking about it. Their thought process never changed. It was just constantly like, I guess we're stuck like this, like the whole book. So there's so many times you can say that before it's just stagnant. However, let's talk about the good things here. The book starts off with Lila being a pirate and learning how to do magic, and like, that was cool. I like those chapters. I love the ending of this. It is such a cliffhanger. Good Lord, it is a cliffhanger. But it was such a good cliffhanger that I can't even be mad at it. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it ends. It ends. Oh, I can't even say because of spoilers. But like, Kel is in a very bad position and Lila's going off to save him. That's what I can say. And, it's good. It's a good ending. Oh, it's so evil and so messed up, but you're like, hot damn, that's a good way to end a book. I know, it's like, it's weird to like really appreciate the art of a cliffhanger, but as far as cliffhanger goes, like, I can't be mad because that was artfully done. I also read Muse of Nightmares by Liene Taylor. This was not on my TBR list, but basically all of my library holds all came in at once, so I had to start reading them right away. This is the sequel to Strange the Dreamer, and if I'm going to compare Strange the Dreamer to Muse of Nightmares, I will say Muse of Nightmares is a cooler title, but a weaker book. I'm just going to say I liked Strange the Dreamer better. I thought it was better paced, and I liked the themes of that story a bit more than I liked Muse of Nightmares, because where Strange the Dreamer was strange, for lack of a better word, Muse of Nightmares is just like, it went off the deep end of strange. Like, it got even weirder. You still have all of the gods and this giant floating angel above a lost magical city named Weep, and all of that. You have magic, real magic going on here, and then they throw in time travel. Yeah, it got weird. The general theme of this is kind of about overcoming loss and grief, and then once you let go of all that pain, you can move on with your future, and it's a better thing for you ultimately. Basically, I feel like the moral of the story was that everything can be fixed with just a good hug. Really, that's kind of how they fix a lot of the problems. They just needed a hug. And I felt that was a bit oversimplified to solve the kind of problems they have going on, because you have Minya, who has been like in Arrested Development. She should be like in her early 20s, but she is still in the body of a 6-year-old girl because she is highly stuck in a moment of trauma where she witnessed something called the Carnage, and basically the Carnage is when the people of Weep rose up against the gods and slaughtered them, and then slaughtered all of the babies they made. So Minya was 6, and she was only able to save a few of the others. She saved 4 of the babies. All the rest of them murdered, and she heard it happening. So Minya is very much trapped in that moment of grief and trauma, and that's why she hasn't changed out of this little 6-year-old. And then you also have this parallel story of these 2 sisters, Kara and Nova, and Nova's journey is kind of very similar, where these 2 sisters, they were everything to each other, and they're ripped apart. I won't say why, because it kind of, spoilers, but basically nothing good happens to Nova after that. She very much has to like grab her life by her own bootstraps and like redirect it and take the power back for herself. And she's had a hard road, and basically she has been hunting for her sister to save her for over 200 years probably. Like, she's been going for a while. Both of their like stories kind of resolve with letting go of the pain and going forward. So it's very much like, hey, you need a hug. You're okay now, right? And they're like, yeah. So I don't know, I felt like the resolution was very oversimplified. However, I still gave it 4 stars. Like, it's not bad, it's very good still. I still enjoyed it. It's very well written. Even if it's really weird, it's like a good weird, where you know like the author went and thought a lot about this and she understands how everything works, even if I don't. So yeah, I'm in. It's good, I recommend. I also read Catwoman Soulstealer by Sarah J. Maas. This was good. I have been having such good luck with the DC Icon series. Seriously, all 3 books so far have been incredible, and especially Catwoman. I think, you know what? I think Catwoman is my favorite so far. It was really good. I enjoyed it quite a bit. We're following Selena, who is Catwoman, and she is super dope. I mean, there is something to be said about Selena in Catwoman, and then you have Selena Sardothian in her Throne of Glass series. Very similar characters. It's a little on the nose, so to speak, but I like Selena Sardothian and I like Selena Kyle, so it worked for me. It's an origin story. It's showing how Selena became Catwoman, and then when she comes back to Gotham City, she basically kind of forms a girl gang with Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn, and they rob everybody. Really fun. I enjoyed it. I loved Selena as a character. She was really driven and badass, and I really appreciated the fact that the character was a she, because usually I feel like I see characters like Selena in this as a male character, and I felt like her being a female character added something to the story. Like, there's an innate thing about femininity that really made it much more complex, her reasons for doing things, and ultimately what her goals were. And she's just badass. She is so badass. Like, really, okay, you know what? I think if Selena Sardothian and Selena Kyle got in a fight, I'd put my money on Selena Kyle. I think she'd win. Just saying, I haven't finished the Throne of Glass series, but I've read the first 2 books, and at this point, I'm like, I'm betting on Selena. I think she'd win. I think she's smarter. I enjoyed the story. I thought it was well-paced. It was action-packed. Selena's dope as a character. I mean, as Catwoman, like, I can't really, like, go much into the story, but, really good. I recommend. Another library book that came in early was A Map of Days by Ransom Riggs. This is kind of a continuation of the Miss Peregrine's Peculiar Children series. Essentially, Miss Peregrine's Peculiar Children are now Miss Peregrine's angsty teens. It's about the Peculiar Children learning how to live their life after the events of Library of Souls, and, you know, it's kind of cataclysmic. And then now they're living in the present day a bit, so they're also, basically their whole lives have changed and how they deal with that. And, okay, I'm gonna say overall, I don't know if the Miss Peregrine's trilogy needed more books in it. I think this is overall maybe kind of unnecessary to the story. I enjoyed it, and I'm gonna read everything Ransom puts out in this series because I like the series, but is it necessary? Probably not. It doesn't need to happen, but it does expand the universe of the Peculiars. In this one, we are going through the American loops, and the American loops, very different than the European loops. The American loops, it's like the Wild West. Like, it's every Peculiar for themselves, and it's not like a friendly, nice place. America has not had good dealings with racism. Like, we have problems with that. Deep-seated racist problems. And I don't know why I thought maybe time loops with Peculiars would be different, because in the American loops, it's not. There's a lot of racism in them still. There's certain loops where if you're a black person, you can't go. So that was kind of an interesting, like, take on it. So I was like, oh, wow, I never thought, like, in the Peculiar world, like, real world things like racism and sexism and all those things would have a place. And obviously they do, because they take place in the real world too, just in a loop of it. The Peculiar Children are, frankly, I thought they were, like, too dumb. You know what I mean? Because, yes, I get it, you're a child and your development is frozen when you're in a time loop, but they've still been in that loop for like 80 years. So even if you're developmentally still like a child, you've still been that age for 80 years. Like, you should be a little smarter, a little bit more mature at least, because you've had some experience. So I was weird that, like, they came back to the present and then just reverted to not having any experience in anything ever. So it felt like a little, like, shouldn't you be smarter? Like, what is happening? And a lot of angsty teens. It's like puberty hit them all with a vengeance. Lots of moping and whining and angst and, like, drama. And yeah, so they went from children to angsty teens. That sums it up very well. I know it's going to continue on with more books, and I'm definitely going to read them. I just didn't particularly think this is necessary. So I ended up giving it like 3.5 stars out of 5, so round up to 4. But yeah, it's fun. It's fun, but unnecessary. Another library book that came in early, I had Clockwork Prince by Cassandra Clare. So after reading this, I feel like in Temple of Doom, where the guy like has the heart and he's like, Kalima! Like that's how I feel because it ripped my still beating heart out. I am hit or miss with Cassandra Clare books because most of the time I'm just like, what is happening? And then sometimes she comes out and like knocks it out of the park. And I think Clockwork Prince is one of those knock it out of the park kind of books. I went in not expecting much because Clockwork Angel was entirely derivative of City of Bones. Like it was almost the same story. A lot of the character archetypes were almost identical. Highly derivative. But anyway, I'm not here to talk shit. I'm here to talk about Clockwork Prince. This is a continuation and you know what? I just really enjoyed it. I feel like a lot of the story, though, was about, like, the mother of all love triangles. Holy moly. So you got Tessa, you got Will, you got Jem. Oh, the ending of this. Oh, like how that love triangle, like, shakes out. It's just, like, I am at the same time very happy for this one character and then devastated for the other. So it's just like, I don't know how to feel. It's just two very like opposing feelings at the same time. There's a lot of love triangle stuff in this book. Also, there's other stuff. There's like corrupt shadow hunters and demons and like confrontations with the overall big bad guy, misogyny and spies, and, you know, all that other stuff that like makes it a plot. There's that as well. But I feel like a lot of the plot was also about this love triangle. I think that's like a lot of the plot in here. The fact that like it really got to me like emotionally and I felt like it ripped my still beating heart out, it made me give it 4.5 stars because there were some problems in it, but not enough that like it bothered me. But oh, my heart, oh my gosh. I hope my heart can take it when I finish this series of Clockwork Princess, because oh, my heart. The last couple books for this video are both part of the Kate Daniels series. I read both Book 1, Magic Bites, and Book 2, Magic Burns of the Kate Daniels series by Alona Andrews. Kate Daniels is a series that they've been writing like the longest. It's like 10 books long. Hadn't read it yet, so I'm like, okay, let's start it. Read Book 1. Like, I gave it like 3.5 stars. It has structural problems where, like, I felt like, wait, am I supposed to understand how this works? Because I have zero understanding of how this works. Like, I think they were just expecting me to figure it out as I went, but like I wasn't, because there wasn't enough details. The world building was just kind of all over the place, so it was difficult to figure out the world this was set in. And honestly, it took me the longest time to realize it's post-apocalyptic. Like, it took me so long to figure that out. Like, it's not, like, abundantly apparent for, like, a long time. And that's, like, a problem with the world building in general. Just not a lot made sense. But that's okay. Like, I can suspend disbelief. And, like, I liked Kate. I liked the overall story. I enjoyed it. It's just, the world building was just, what is going on here? I can't explain it even. Like, what's happening? What is happening? However, I have heard from multiple sources, the authors themselves included, that while this is the book 1 of the series, like really you should start with book 2, because book 2 clears up a lot of shit and is better written in general. So it's like, okay, let's see what book 2 has to offer. I read book 2, Magic Burns, and you know what? It did clear up a lot of those problems I had with Magic Bites. Like, to be honest, I'm still not 100% sure how this magic system works because, like, it still doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But as I'm reading it, I do get the sense that the authors understand how the magic works. And that's, like, a really important distinction because sometimes you're reading a fantasy novel and you feel like the author doesn't get it either. They're just kind of making it up as they go. So it's weird that both of us don't get it. But in this one, I genuinely feel like the authors understand what they're doing. So even though I don't understand it, like, I feel comforted, like, I can just, like, suspend disbelief. Like, okay, there's a giant fish now. That happened. And it doesn't bother me because I feel like it makes sense to them, and therefore that translates in the writing. So, like, it makes sense to me, even though it doesn't. Like, I can go with it, basically. We got more of the characters I liked. We got to meet different species in this. Yeah, it's just urban fantasy. It's got Kate Daniels. She's kind of a magical mercenary, and then she solves crimes. And there's this Curran, who's the Beast Lord of Atlanta, and he's like king of the shifters, and then they solve crimes sometimes together. There's also some, like, sparks between them, and I'm like, ooh, they're either gonna kill each other or fuck each other, one or the other. It's gonna happen. I appreciate their, like, snarky banter. I appreciate both of them as different characters. I like her, like, teenage werewolf best friend, Derek. Oh my gosh, I love Derek. He's a great character. So yes, all of the characters are dope. I really like them a lot, even though the magic system is, like, all over the place. I like the characters, and I like the journey, and I'm still going to continue reading this. Read a lot of books this month. Holy moly. So like I mentioned in the beginning of this video, I did read 13 books this month. I have gone over 10 of them. There are 3 final books I read. They're all romances, and the thing is, they're all bad. Bad enough that I feel like I need to make my own video for them because I need, like, time to explain. So stay tuned for that. It's gonna be the next video where I talk about some bad romances. So if you're in the mood for that, stay tuned. Let me know in the comments down below if you've read any of these books. What did you think about them? Did you like them? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? Let me know down in the comments below. If you like this video, make sure you give it a like. And if you want to see more videos, make sure you subscribe. And I'll see you guys soon. Bye!